Okay, so they're asking us to factor this expression. And what I want us to notice is that the 4 is a perfect square. And so what that is a clue of is that we may be working with something called a special form. And what that should lead us to do is to check whether or not 196 is also a perfect square, because that gives us some clues about which direction to go in order to factor this. So I'm going to look at my calculator. And I'm going to get the square root of 196, take the square root of it. And what I get is 14. In other words, 14 times 14 is 196. Okay, so the way I'm going to use that clue is that not only is 4 a perfect square, but it turns out that 196 is also a perfect square. Now the next clue, the third clue, is that we have a minus sign. And if you'll remember, another way to talk about minus signs is to use the word difference. So what we have is a difference of squares. Now we've had difference of squares when we were multiplying binomials. So let me remind you of what that looks like. When you have something like A plus B and A minus B, if I multiply this out, what I'll do is use a FOIL method to help us. So first, that's A squared. Then the outer is minus AB. The inner is plus AB. And the last is minus B squared. Notice that these cancel and we're left with A squared minus B squared. In other words, we have a perfect square here. We have a perfect square here. And then we have a difference. Now, what we just did by going from here to here is we multiplied. When we go from here to here, what we're doing is we are factoring. I'm going to leave the word factor instead of writing factoring. We have just factored. And so notice what they're asking us to do. I was going to try to highlight this underline it. They're asking us to factor. And what they're asking us to factor is a difference of squares. Let me write that down. So they don't tell us off the bat that we're factoring a difference of squares, but that's indeed what they're asking us to do. And when you factor difference of squares, you have to go back to look at these and notice that you have an a plus b and an a minus b. Now, how does that relate to here? We found out that the square root of 196 is 14, and that since 4 is a perfect square, its square root is 2. So what do we do with this? We're going to have something that looks like this, where you have a plus and a minus. And the way you find out what goes in these empty places is you go back and you take the square root of each of these terms. So you'll see that you get 196. Now, I didn't talk too much about this, but it's also, you have to take the square root of u, which is the square root of u squared, which is u. I'm sorry, the square root of 196 is 14. And the square root of u squared is u. The square root of 4 is 2. And we want to also put that in over here. It's a 14u minus the 2. So if I were to start from here and multiply, I get this. But what they're asking us to do is start with a difference of squares and factor. So this is what they're looking for if you are factoring. And so this here is our final answer.